Welcome to the Read Your Keys podcast. I am your host, Joel Lopez. If you're enjoying the content, please like, squish, and smash those like and follow buttons. We're on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Today, my guest is Mr. Brian McCoppin. He keeps it poppin'. He's a homeschooling Florida man, father of three, and a lover of a wife in Jesus. Author of HellDesk books, and the Paladin books. Brian, what's poppin', my man?
Hey, Joel. Thanks for having me on. Big fan.
Big fan. That's the first time I've ever heard that. I'll take it.
I did my homework getting ready for this, and you've had some outright celebrities on here. I feel honored to be part of this show.
You know, I just like to talk to people who I find interesting, or people who are like, I just want to chop it up with people, and so that's kind of what this is. But I also like if there's kind of like some nuggets that we could get in there, that's Read Your Keys. But for the most part, like, hey, I have fun with people on here, so I like to invite people who I can have fun with. I have fun with you on Twitter, so it was like, yo, Brian, you want to hop on? So that's kind of how we ended up here.
Me relating you to Conan got me an invite. Is that what's going on?
That was amazing. That was amazing. So some background. I don't even know what the original tweet was, but you kind of like came up with this meme of Conan, and it was like the wifosexual. What was it? What is best in life? And instead of doing the whole, what does he say normally in the movie?
Like crushing your enemies and lamentations of their woman. Something like that.
Yeah. But you did it for me, and I was like, oh, dang, this is really good. So
it was about your book you wrote. About your communications book.
Oh,
here's a summary.
okay.
Here's a quick summary.
Oh, okay. You know what's funny is like I forget the things that I do. I got dad brain, so like it's like I'll kind of like Twitter's kind of like where I just kind of like dump stuff out of my brain, and then it's just like, oh, like, do you remember you said this? I was like, I said that. Like, oh, I don't remember.
Yeah,
but
I do that too.
yeah,
I'll scroll back to my feed, like, man, what was I thinking? Or man, that's great. Who
that's
wrote
great.
That?
Yeah, that was a banger. This one's only got 2 likes. Damn, this one should have had a lot more than that. Yeah. But yeah. So the reason, one of the reasons that I did have you on is because you're a writer, and the Paladin books is something that was really intriguing to me. So my understanding of it so far is that it's just kind of like a Christian fiction. But to kind of preface that too, like, I'm kind of the age where wherever like you put like Christian in front of something, it means it wasn't going to be good. And so it was just like, oh, that doesn't sound good. Like going back to like listening to the music, right, in the 90s, like I wouldn't listen to Christian music. I was like, this is just, it's just not good. Like, hey, I want to worship, I want to do that whole thing, I'll do it in church, but there's no way that I'm gonna like be on the radio listening to Christian music. Now fast forward today, that's all I listen to because I think the music is outstanding. Like, it's just good music. Like, I'm a hip hop dude, like that's what I listen to. And now it's like, hey, Hillsong, Bethel, all these people, like, they make great music. So to kind of preface that though, now in hearing like what you had done with the Paladin books, I thought it was fascinating. And that's one of the reasons I did want to talk about that. So not to kind of steal your thunder, can you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, to kind of set a preface for it, I'm a big reader. I grew up reading fiction books, action fiction. Like, I love like the Dune novels, the Gunslinger by Stephen King, Jack Reacher novels. I love these action-oriented heroes. And for me, there was a gap that there wasn't these true Christian, truly good heroes out there. And I understand the hesitation a lot of authors have. As a Christian, we're supposed to be known by our love, not really by our violence. So it became, how can we make a book that appeals to a young man or an older man who enjoys action? He grew up watching Rambo and the Terminator. Like, how can I make this into a Christian book? So I said, well, if we make all the enemies outright demons, just the vilest, nastiest creatures imaginable, let's have that be the enemy. So then our Christians can do violent acts upon these things. Jesus talks about being angry at sin. So if we personify sin, we can have our characters act violent against them. So to make it interesting, I look back at the Old Testament, and I remember going back to Sunday school and growing up, thinking, man, there are some awesome stories. You got Samson, who's the strongest person ever, and you got Solomon, the smartest person ever, and you got Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego surviving the fire, and you got Daniel and the lions. You got all these amazing things that Christians could do in the Old Testament, almost supernatural abilities. I said, what happens if we take that and make them modernized and say, hey, here's some superpower Christians blessed by God in some way, and they have guns, they have swords, they have these amazing fights with these demons, and just kind of play that out into a book. So, and that became the Paladin books.
That's interesting that you say that, because I've always thought that the biblical stories are the best stories, but we don't tell them. And I get it. Jesus is he transformed, but it's like, hey, let's just talk about the stories here, like the David and Goliath story. Everybody knows it, but it's just like it's one of the greatest stories ever. There was actually in church one time, we had a speaker. He wasn't really a pastor, but he was kind of on church staff, and he told us a story. I can't even remember his name, but it was like one of the kings was like really fat, like super fat, and so he goes in and assassinates him. So he sticks the knife into him, but the guy is so fat that they didn't realize that he so it was like, here's like this spy, going in and assassinating the king, but he's so fat. And you think of like these, like, I don't watch a lot of anime, but like you kind of get this, if like you kind of pictured it like as an anime thing, it'd be like, oh yeah, like now you've kind of got this grotesque king, and you have I can't remember who it was. It might have been Nathan. I don't know, but he kills him and he leaves, but nobody knew that he had done it. And it was just like, wow, like this is such a great just story. Just tell me the story first. Like let's just do that. And then, if there's like the message in there, like, all right, great. But like a lot of the times I think that we lose because you try to get to the message first, but it's just like, no, like you gotta like just get the people to kind of read your story or tell your story. Like, people watch movies, right? They like sometimes they're getting a message, they don't know it, but the first things they go for is like, is this a good story? And what you've done, I think it's an outstanding concept, because I think it's lacking. Like, I had never heard anything like that. It's like, oh yeah, let's let him be a G. Like, let him John Wick everybody. It's like, oh, I like watching John, like, because I am your demographic, right? Like, I like watching action movies. Like, every dude is like, what's the top 5 movies? Like, oh, like, let's watch 300, let's watch Braveheart, let's watch Gladiator. Why? It's like, well, they kick ass like first, like, so let a dude kick ass, and he's over here like getting on demons, son. Like, that sounds like it's eventually going to be a movie.
That's my hope. And, you talk about David and Goliath. We get the watered-down version of David and Goliath in church. Like, if you really read that passage in the Bible, David comes out and starts just yelling at Goliath. Like, you come at me with swords and spears and shields. I come at you from God. And then he throws the rock at him, and the rock's not what kills him. He goes over, grabs his sword, cuts the dude's head off, and has that trophy. Like, that's the story. Like, that's not the Sunday school version. That's the actual version where, man, David was vicious in the name of God, and he's powerful that way. And I think modern men need to be this powerful leader of their families and of community, and we lose a lot of that when we water down these stories.
Well, I think like, you talk about like politics, you talk about like all these things. Like, there's kind of a certain way that people expect Christians to be. Like one of my favorite football players was Tim Tebow, because he was a straight dog. But you would never say like, oh, Tim Tebow ran this dude over, like he's a bad dude. It's like, no, this is the game you're playing. You kind of all understand it. Like, let him be a dog. Like, he's not like going out, in regular life running people over. But it's like, in this arena, like, yeah, go ahead and go for it. And I think like Christians try and be the same, like, as they would be out regular as they are. Like, to me, you writing books is you in the arena, right? so it's like, well, he's going crazy with this violence, or talking about demons and stuff like that. But it's like, no, he's in the arena, so he needs to kind of put on his metaphorical helmet and go in here and be a dog. Same thing with the music. It's like, oh, it's not biblical. Like, this movie doesn't fit in, all the way down the line with the Bible, so we're gonna reject it. Or this song isn't the songs that we sang 60 years ago. We're gonna reject it. Like, you're dealing with the traditions of man. I guess that's what I'm saying. The traditions of man that you're dealing with. Did you deal with any kind of that pushback or tension for yourself of like, hey, do I want to make it line up with the Bible, or I have free reign to just write my story?
I had a little bit. I'll give a little spoiler. There's a later chapter where our main character actually end up in a conflict of humans as opposed to demons.
Mm-hmm.
The story kind of played itself out as a natural progression, and the humans I depicted my first pass through the chapter, I had them very vile and very profane. Mm-hmm. And I had my wife read the chapter, and she's like, there's a lot of F words and P words and C words in this chapter, mm-hmm. and she goes, I know people say these things in real life, and these are what real people how to react to the scenario. But can you adjust this to make it a little bit more, glorifying? So I had to go back and edit the chapter and take
mm-hmm.
out those harsher, profane words. And I said, well, the Bible's got some bad words. It says hell and damn and,
mm-hmm.
and ass are all in the Bible. So, okay, here's words I can use.
Mm-hmm.
So to a point, I did have to adjust the novel a little bit, adjust the story a little bit to make it more in line. And mm-hmm. I'm sad a little bit that I had to lose some of these harsher words that I know that in reality people will say. Mm-hmm. But I also didn't want to scare off our target audience, which might be, an 18-year-old kid who's not sure about whether he's a Christian or not. He likes action novels. He likes the idea of the violence. He thinks it's cool to see demons being fought by people. You mentioned anime. I think of Vampire Hunter D was one that when I was a teenager growing up. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel on Saturday nights. I thought it was a cool show. And so that kid who's not sure if he wants to be a Christian or not, this might be the thing that pushes him over that line to go to church and meet a mentor and start reading the Bible. So I really was careful on that last chapter. I said, let's pull back on this profanity and try to make it so people still understand the persons that are being the conflict of our main characters are still vile, but not so much so that I can have an R-rated book, an R-rated movie. So keep a little PG-13 mm-hmm. to an extent.
So that was a conflict for you then. It wasn't so much as it biblical as the language I'm using. That's kind of where it was for you.
Right. Yeah. In the story itself, I've written over the last 15 years. It's kind of been on my heart, and it's mm-hmm. I felt compelled to do it. So I think I know it's I can't 100% say for sure it's what God wants me to do, but I've been pushed in that direction. So it's one of those things where, when you pray enough and you talk to God enough, and you realize these are things that I feel comfortable doing that kind of flow out of me. Mm-hmm. I've had a very blessed life, so I figure this is something that I can do to contribute where others have done much more. So
yeah, I think kind of going back to the profanity thing, because when I tweet, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I should say it this way or if I should do it this way, because I do have I have that same tension where it's like, what is the point of this? But there is the this is the way people talk, or this is the way it kind of came out in my head, or this is authentic, and so this is the way I'm gonna say it, because I've never really identified with just I've always had a great appreciation for pastors, and we talked about Bethel and stuff like that, but the place I always felt most at home was in a football locker room. And there was, you do just talk the way they talked, and it's okay, but this is it. I never felt comfortable in the church building, like I did in the locker room or the football field. So, the 18-year-old, I don't know. It's your book. You do it for your reasons. But when I was 18, I was listening to like, Wu-Tang and, like all kinds of crazy stuff. I listen to that now. I was like, dang, that's what I was listening to. And like, I was a Christian. So like, but I get it, right? Like you don't want to like, you want to be able to like go back and be like, okay, like I'm okay with my kids reading this or that whole thing that kind of comes with the understanding that like this is kind of like a legacy for me, and I want it to be taken the right way and not get distracted by my choice in vocabulary for my characters.
Yeah, and the same thing goes for my HellDesk books, the first series I'm working on. These are true stories on IT support, and I told my daughters, they love reading it. The book's published, that they've read through the first 5 chapters, and I said, wait till you're 18 and read the last 3 chapters, because when you deal with IT, you're going to deal with pornography. And when you deal with pornography, you get bad language, you get anger. So I told my girls, I said, first 5 chapters are fine, that's simple stuff, but hold off before you read until you're 18. These are conversations that your mother and I are going to have with you when you get to an older age, but I want to have these conversations with you before you read these chapters. So there's a lot of bad language in that book. Like, if I need an outlet for profanity, my HellDesk books are it, because it's just people yelling at each other about how bad their IT is. So plenty of F words in that.
That's funny. I would not have thought of that, because I don't know. To me, it's like very, very. It's a dry subject. Like I wasn't even planning on talking about it, but like so now you kind of have me intrigued. So like so what are the hell? I thought those were just like, because I listened to the podcast that you did, and it was like you were like, oh, it's very dry, and so like in my head I kind of like checked out when you said that too. But like now you're talking about like dudes getting cussed out and porn and stuff. So now I was like, oh, okay, well, what's going on here now? Did I miss something?
Yeah, the long and short of that book is I've been in IT for almost 30 years now. And I've worked myself to a point where I'm a leader in the industry. And I took my experiences. I took probably 12 craziest stories and combined them into a book that follows along this fictional company and some of the wild things I've run across. And when you're like a CIO or a VP of IT for a company, you see some wild things that people are doing. You see the things they download, the things they watch, the things they work on, what they use their computers for. It's insane. Think about the things you do that you're ashamed of, and multiply that by like 1,000. That is what we. And so, my wife and my best buddy were like, "Hey, you got to write this stuff down. These are great stories. People will love these." I said, "It's IT. It's kind of boring, but it's selling in 5 countries now. It's kicked off a little bit. It's done. I wrote it over 3 months. It was just like, hey, this is a little fun little passion project on the side and." So if it's a quick read. It's only about 20,000 words. But
how many pages is that?
Like 180 pages. Like
oh, okay.
It's a pretty short read. It goes through like these 7 circles of what I call IT hell. So like bad budget, bad leadership. All the things that we've all run across if you've ever had a job that involved IT. And just I take people I knew in real life, change their names, kind of combine people, and to make like these biggest jerks you can imagine, and our various heroes along the way, the IT saints I call them, are trying to help them just fix their computer, are getting destroyed by these individuals, just yelling at them and swearing. And so I figure most people, if IT is boring to them, but like my clients, they'll use it. They'll say, hey, these are great books. This is why I want to hire you. I want the ending of this book to be my company. So before I go to a client, I'll send up a dozen copies. Say, hey, read these, give them to your IT team, and I'll be there in a few weeks to kind of teach them what's up.
That's so. Is it kind of like the Rich Dad Poor Dad, where like you're telling stories to make the points for IT, or is it like a straight story? Because I thought it was just like here's an IT book, how to, very very dry technical, but it's not. So now I'm actually really fascinated with it. I'm gonna have to check it out, because like the more you're talking about it, I was like, dang, it just sounds cool. Like one of the authors I like is Malcolm Gladwell, where he would take these very mundane things and he finds a story in them. Like one of them that I read was like he had talked about like a guy was trying to make like fancy ketchup. Like you had Grey Poupon, you have all these fancy mustards, and he was like, I want to do the fancy ketchup version of it. And so he kind of goes through it, tells the guy's story, and it was just like, dude, I'm riveted by this story about ketchup. And you're doing this. I am one of the least technically savvy people. Like, you kind of saw me kind of like fumbling around before the show for this. So like, to me, it's just not very interesting. It's kind of like hey, I need to do it so I can do this. But man, so is there like an actual like fictional, like a hero in the story as you go through, and he kind of goes through the seven circles, which is reference to Dante's Inferno. Is that what it is? Yeah.
That's So each chapter, the first half is a fictional story, based on true life events. So, and the hero might change a little bit. Sometimes you're new to IT, sometimes you're the IT manager, sometimes you're the VP of IT, but it tells that person's perspective of this ridiculous story and their interaction with people. And then the second of the chapter is how to prevent this from happening, or how to rectify this if it does happen, or tips and tricks to get around these sort of things. So, we have like all the IT demons. We have like the Sloppy Steve. Everybody knows Sloppy Steve. He's the IT guy that doesn't shave. He's got the My Little Pony shirt with Cheeto stain on it. He's a little overweight. And the Not My Job Nick. We've all met that guy. He's like, I can't fix that. You got to call so and so. So I have these demons you meet that you've met in real life. Like my favorite is Right Now Rita. This lady wants it fixed right now. Like, I need it now. Like, man, we need like $10,000. We need time. No. Right now. Like, okay, Rita.
Yeah.
You'll. It's kind of like the show The Office, where you was like, I know that person. I know them. I know Dwight in real life.
Yeah. Dude, that sounds awesome. Like that. I had no plans on talking about it. I heard you talk about it on the other podcast, and it was like, oh, it's IT. It was like, dude, this sounds awesome. Like, I'm gonna have to check this out. Like, I am serial book buyer and not reader, but like, I want, like, this is like now I want it, just because the concept is so cool of like, you wrapped up a how-to book, but you made it into a story entertaining, because like, we roll around Twitter. There's a lot of how-to books like, hey, this is how I do this. This is how I do this. Like, okay, that's cool. I come in and I get the information. But I thought Rich Dad, like, I was having a conversation with Stefan Grant, and it was like, hey, when Rich Dad Poor Dad came out, like, it blew my mind, because it was like, first of all, I had never heard of these things, but he made it into a story, which made it interesting, made me want to follow along. And it sounds like you've kind of done the same thing with the IT book. Like, I am not interested in IT at all, but now I just want to hear these crazy stories. And I'm not that I'm some saint or whatever, but to hear like, oh man, like people like doing like porn, like the other side of IT, and you start thinking about like, oh, all the kind of clandestine things that you hear on politics about certain laptops and stuff like that. It's like, oh, wait a minute, like here's a whole angle that I've never thought of for IT, just because, like, to me it's just like, okay, in my mind it's like, here it is over here, it's pretty boring, it's pretty dry, there's nothing entertaining about it. But you've got me now intrigued about the world of IT, my man.
Well, I got good news for you. You know that big summer book sale going on now, where all the books are free or $1 or less? Mine's part of that sale. So if you see that rolling around Twitter, my book's part of that $1 sale going on right now.
Is that are those physical copies, or are they
that's digital
downloads?
If you want, I'll send you a physical. I got a box somewhere. I'll send
okay.
You one. I'll sign it for you and everything.
All right, that'd be great, actually. That's really the cool thing about Twitter, is that like I'm making like friends. It's like, oh, you guys are creating stuff. Like, oh, I want to do that too. Or it's just like, oh, look at what my friend did. This is my friend's book. Like, my wife and I, we were having a conversation about like, the kind of friends that we want to have, and it's just like, well, it's kind of hard for us, because it's like, we want to be around people who are like fit, faithful, and like are actually like doing things. Like, you're like, you had this kind of conversation, right? You go to church, like, hey man, what do you got going on? It's like, well, I watch these TV shows. It's like, oh, okay. Like, I like TV, and I like to converse with people, but it's like, it's different to be like, hey, yo, like, I wrote this IT book, this IT fiction book, and I'm writing this book about like slaying demons. Like, oh wow, like dude, you like, So it's just a different type of person, and also it's just cool to be like, hey man, like look at what my boy did. Like, you know, he worked hard on this thing. You know, here it is. You know, check it out. And he signed it for me because I know him.
Yeah, you guys, when you get your physical copy of your book, I gotta send me one too. I have the
I don't
digital
have
already. I read through.
I don't have one, man. I worked with I don't know, you know Walter Wiggins, right?
Yeah,
Like,
he's the guy who did my video.
Yeah, that's right. He helped me with that. I've sat on that for a few years now, and it was like a different version. And I've always had this thing about writing where it was just like writing is boring. Like, to me, I didn't like writing, and also, like you've seen the way I tweet, right? It's like, here is the way you tweet, and then you write. It's like, this doesn't even sound like the same person. And I was like, I know that doesn't even sound like me. Like, I don't want to send it out because like that doesn't sound like me at all. So like, people are gonna be like, what the hell? Like, where's like this huge disconnect? So he helped me through a lot of stuff to just kind of like, you know, like, hey, like let's find your voice. And that's a good question. So how did you find your voice? I mean, were you always like, you know, you were a big reader. I've always been a big reader, but writing was like that's a whole different ball game. So for you, was that always kind of how it was?
You know, I think like a lot of dads, even before I was a dad, I love telling stories. You know, whether it's a joke or just relating something that happened in my life, or just talking about the Bible. So I've always been really good at telling stories, and my friends and family are the ones that, hey, you got to start writing this stuff down. You know, you tell these amazing stories, you have these great ideas, start writing it down. So my wife and my best friend David said, hey, you got to write this down. You got to put this in words. You got to finish it. Just finish the book, get it out there, and get people to read this, because you've got a voice, Brian. You don't need to do anything with it. You got to go out there and just have people listen to it. So if they hadn't pushed me so hard, I wouldn't have finished that book, and the Paladin book would be out last week, October. It's going through edits now. So I owe all to them. These are people I respect, and people that push me to work harder every day. And if they hadn't said these things, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I think that's true for every husband and every father. You got to have that wife that drives you. You got to have that best friend or that group of friends that drive you to be better. You don't want to come home and watch 4 hours of TV every night. You want to come home, you want to work out for a couple hours, you want to produce something, you want to spend time for your kids. You know, that 4 hours of TV time, yeah, when you're 75 and you got nothing else going on, enjoy the TV shows. They'll still be there. You can stream them then. But when you're in your 30s and 40s or even your 20s, get with your family and talk to them and share ideas and have them push you to be better in what you do every day.
So the writing for you, but was that something that not came naturally, but it wasn't a big deal for you? It was always like, go like back to like school. Did you enjoy writing back then, or was it just kind of like, okay, like I can do it, no big deal? I
did. I had trouble with spelling, so computers when they came around the spell check, it kind of made it really helped my confidence. You know, I would, like anybody else, I've got my weaknesses, and for me it was spelling, and it really was. So I wanted to tell the stories. I enjoyed people's reaction to them and responding to them and getting their feedback. And I've done theater. You know, I was in musical theater all through middle school, high school, and college. I've done productions beyond that. So I like being in front of a crowd. Like you, I've done sports. You know, I did lacrosse through high school and college. It's a little semi-pro there, and I just like being out in front of people and telling the story and speaking about it. So writing was just another medium to get my message across beyond just being on TV or being on stage or being anywhere else. I said, here's another way I can say, here are my thoughts, here are my ideas, and I want to share them with the world.
Are you the journaling type? Because I know that's kind of a good habit to have of journaling. Was that something that you kind of did normally already, or something that you incorporated to help you with your writing? Because it's one thing to be like, hey, I'm an IT guy. Maybe you're for work you're having to kind of develop like handbooks and manuals and processes, so you're kind of like working that writing muscle, at least in some sense. But to go from that to like, hey man, I'm writing like these very cool, longer stories. That's quite a leap.
Yeah, not in the traditional sense, like you said about writing, manuals and guides for IT. I've been doing that for a long time. But for my fiction writing, I just use Google Docs, and when an idea hits me, I'll just type it in there real quick. I say, "Here's an idea. Here's some concepts," and I'll have like this long-running Google Doc sheet that I'll go back to and pull ideas out of for my writing. I know a lot of people will have the journal next to their bed and they'll write before they go to sleep, and they wake up and they write down their dreams and stuff. I tried that. It wasn't a habit I could form, but so for me, the habit I was able to build was the Google Doc on my phone. And it worked because most of my ideas usually came out of the quiet times. I'll take the boat out, or I'll be in the shower, or I'll be working out just myself, and the ideas will start flowing. And I can't write while I'm doing these things, so as soon as I'm done, I got my phone right there. Oh, let me write this down real quick. And even like the voice to text helps a lot. So if I'm out somewhere and I really want to catch that thought or that idea, I can have my phone record it real quick and translate the text for me. And so it's not traditional journaling, I would say, but it's capturing ideas kind of on the fly.
That's interesting, because I think the medium, sometimes the medium kind of helps with the habit, right? Like you would have in your head, like, oh, journaling is me having like my journal book and a pen and writing in there, or like you said, that you get that inspiration in the middle of the night, and it's like, okay, I have this thing to write it down. But for you, it was a Google Doc. And I don't think that it should be lost on people that sometimes, like, you to find the thing that works for you, that it doesn't have to be like yours or like mine, because that's the one thing in going through with Walter. It's like, oh, I actually kind of enjoy like having a brain dump document, and like my setup was like, my laptop is up on the stand, and I was kind of like up here typing like this, and then I got a keyboard, like the little Mac keyboard separated from it, and so it's like, oh, like I'm more comfortable writing now. So it's not this, like I was just in a bad position to do it, and I was like, oh, this is one little thing where it's just like, oh, this is more comfortable, so I actually enjoy this. So it's like these other the right environment and the thing that works for you is what I'm finding. Again, like Walter says, like, you are a writer now. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, but like, like that's what I found for me, because it was this huge mental hurdle. Like for me, writing a tweet was fun. Anything more than a tweet was now like work. So now in my head, it's like, oh, now it's work. And so it's like, my posture changes and stuff. When I tweet, it's just like, oh, yo, you know what I mean? And then when now that it's something longer, it's like, now it's work. For you to sit down and write, did that feel like a lot of work for you, or was it very enjoyable because it's like, oh man, I got this story, and then do you have it like, outlined out, like, hey, here's my protagonist, here's my antagonist, and now I'm just kind of like filling it in because I kind of have the skeleton of the story that I want to write.
Yeah, so for me, the actual process of typing the words out was the hardest part. Like a lot of guys, I didn't want to sit there and just be typing out how much else going on. So I had to make it easier for myself. So I've got my main desktop, I've got my laptop on now. I even got myself a Chromebook, a little $100 dealie that I can have in the car. So if we're going on family trips, I say, hey wife, can you drive for a while? I got some ideas I want to type out. So I had to make it convenient for me. Through my profession, I'm sitting at my computer a lot, working with people, monitoring metrics, and going over numbers and stuff. And there's sometimes where I get a little break. All right, let me just pop out a couple hundred words over here. So I had to make it convenient. So where a lot of writers will say they discipline, they'll set aside several hours. You're going to sit down, you're going to pump out words, doesn't matter what comes out. For me, it was, I got to make it easier on myself. And every writer's going to be different. You got to find what works for you. And for me, just having multiple devices around the house, around the vehicles that I could easily pop onto when I had inspiration to write a few hundred words.
Do you leave the laptop in the car? Is it that hot in Florida?
The Chromebook sits in the kitchen. We got like these Chromebooks the girls use for school and stuff. So mine's over there. If we were going on a trip, I'll just grab it and it'll be charged in the car. The car's got a little plug too. But yeah, you can't. We have a garage, so our vehicle's in the garage. But yeah, even then, you don't want to leave stuff.
No, that's what I wasn't sure if this was just like, oh, this is just like my everyday carry. laptop that I keep in the car just in case, you know, I get some inspiration. Like, I'm gonna bank some up because that I know it gets pretty hot there. So I was like, oh, let me make sure that thing isn't gonna get fried in the car.
And then, you know, the Google Docs again, because that's on your phone too. So if you want to write, like my girls the other day ran a snow cone stand. They just put a table up and they put the snow cone maker out. I wanted to watch them, you know, because like a good dad, you're going to hang out with the kids and make sure they're not getting bothered by weirdos. Yeah. I just sat in the shade of the house with my phone and I was writing more of my story on my phone as I watched them. Now, I don't want to interfere because I wanted them to do their thing and their business, but I still wanted to be the guardian. So having the phone there, just typing somewhere, it was awkward. It's you know, it's like you said, Twitter. I can write the 120 characters, no problem. But when you're doing thousands of characters, it gets a little silly. So
going to your girls, was there like a neighborhood park that they were able to kind of get set up, or there was like a street where they can kind of set up their stand and sell the snow cones?
They just did it in front of the house.
Oh, okay.
It's funny. They had the $1 snow cone, they had the machine, and everything else, and neighbors would come by and drop like $10, $15 for one snow cone, and I was like, "You're gonna make more money than I am right now."
yeah. Well, because my kids will do something similar. They'll make lemonade. So like they're big on the lemonade, but they actually do like fresh hand squeezed lemonade. So it's actual. You know, it's not powder. So they actually do the lemonade. But it's really is interesting because they'll have the same experience. It's like they'll sell it for $0.25, and somebody will drop $10 for a solo cup of lemonade, you know, and you know they might have put their fingers in the cup when they hand it to them, kind of thing. But people love to see kids doing that type of stuff. Is that something that you encouraged or showed your kids that they kind of do that on their own? Because my kids, once we kind of showed them, now they kind of do it on their own. Was that a similar experience for you?
Yeah, I think it's a good lesson for parents. It's about modeling. My wife and I have several sources of income. One of them is we have a snow cone trailer. We had this trailer we bought. Okay. We were like, hey, on the weekends we're in Florida, snow cones sell like crazy. We take them to events. So we had the extra machines, and our daughters see us hustling, trying to get the extra income, make their life better. So just unprompted, they'll grab a fold-up table, they'll grab a snow cone machine and take it downstairs, and they'll come and say, hey, Dad, can you drag the cooler downstairs for us? We can't carry the cooler full of ice. And, oh, yeah, girls, I love it. This is great. So I think it's just they see my wife and I always working to improve our life. They said, what can we do?
Right.
And I think they learned a lot from that. They'll come to us and say, hey, Dad, I need $3, and what can I do? Instead of saying I need $3. So they kind of learned that lesson that, you know, it's almost Ayn Randian. Everything has value. And I don't want to get too crazy on libertarian beliefs and views, but I believe there's definitely value in teaching your kids that money is not free. Money comes from efforts or ideas. And so we wanted to model that for our girls, and it's really paid off. And they're always asking, hey, can we do a snow cone table? Is it okay? So I dig it. They've even started mowing the lawn because unprompted they say, hey, Dad, can we mow the lawn?
I think I saw that. Yeah,
can we mow the lawn? It's like, sure. And I didn't say anything. They just mowed it. And then like they've been mowing it. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. They say, hey, Dad, can you pay us to mow the lawn?
Yeah.
It's been a few months now. So
I'm trying to get some free work out of them.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. So you have your INT business, but then you were also doing the snow cones on the side and picking up other projects. What was that? Just because you were just like, well, what else can I do? Because I'm always kind of fascinated by that mindset, right? Because a lot of people are like, well, I do enough, but you're the what else can I do? So
we were at an event in Florida, and super hot, that's Florida, and a huge event, thousands and thousands of people there, and only 5 vendors were selling water. And the lines were like 50 people deep getting water. My wife and I were like, man, how hard is it to sell water? And that evolved into the idea for the snow cone trailer, which sells water as well. And we looked into it. And I was like, man, for less than $30,000, we can have this up and running. And we made our money back within like a month. Like, this is something we can really kill upon. And again, that month we had major events. We went there, and they're multiple day events. We spent 3 or 4 days there, and we're making $4,000 or $5,000 per day at those events because people are lined up. But it's just, we had a need we saw needed filled. We knew that we could profit from it, and it's something that was in our skill set. So
Yeah.
we're always in the, my wife, she drives me. She's my driver, and I say to her, "Hey, I got this book coming out. If I sell 1 million copies, can I focus on writing full time?" She's like, "Nope. You do your IT thing still. You keep writing books. We'll keep selling snow cones." I'm like, all right, we'll do all this.
Well, I think part of it is that you kind of you scratch different itches with, like, the writing is your kind of creative side, and then the IT is probably more of your analytical side, right? And so it's like, there's that side of you, and then the ice cream is like the social. Hey, we do it as a family too, right? Because do the kids help you with that too?
Yeah, the one runs the register, one sells the water, so it's like we're all in it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Like that is really like I have this thing about, like, our generation, I think for sure, like our dads went off to work, and like there's a separation between kids and their fathers for sure, and now their mothers too, but for sure their fathers are out of the house. And it's like, well, why is there like these disconnects in the family? It's like, well, you're always apart. The kids go off to school, and then if they have siblings, they're separated too. Like, they're going to the same building or the same school, but they're separated. They're each in their own classroom. They don't see each other. Dad goes off to work for 8 to 10 hours, but like you guys are like, you're able to do this thing together where it's like, okay, here's we can make money and we can do it together as a family, as opposed to like I go make money for, well, in your instance, you do own your own business, so kudos to you. But for most men, myself included, it's like, hey, you go work for somebody else and you're gone for 8 to 10 hours. But there's something about like being able to do that together as a family that kind of builds in their head, like, whoa, I can work with my siblings and my parents, and we can make money, and there's value in that. But also we get the memories, right? I'm pretty sure there's like cool stories, or just the stress of like, oh man, we need more ice, or hey, we're running out of this flavor, or hey, you took the order wrong. And so the conflict, but also the kind of rewards of like, hey, we just made 5K today. That's pretty cool, isn't it, kids? Like, some people don't make that in a month. We just made it in a day for working, a 12-hour day in the heat, but still, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, imagine you're a 12-year-old kid and you make $500 in tips in one day.
Jeez.
Like that's rewarding,
And so how often do you guys, is that like pretty consistent, or is it kind of like there's event season there where it's like, okay, we have a lot of events coming up, so we're gonna
it's getting harder. I think the event organizers are kind of onto our scams. So many events want you to pay tremendous sums up front to be an attendee there. So we're like, man, you want us to pay $1,000 to come to your event? We can't guarantee we make $1,000 over the 2 or 3 days we're there, because we don't know how big your event is. So we've backed down a lot on it. We're actually looking to change our model a little bit to go from the trailer to a truck. So sell the trailer, do the truck model, and we want to look at if we have like friends or family that are in need, say, hey, go drive the truck for a couple days. You need some extra money, drive the truck around, keep the profits. We'll just pay off the expenses, but keep the profits for yourselves. So it can become a way of helping our friends in need as well.
Yeah, because that's what I thought, though, about those events, that I thought you have to pay for them. So before you could just, hey, we need vendors, show up, great. But now it's like, hey, you gotta pay to come in and sell your wares.
Yes, yeah. Gone are the days where they're desperate for vendors. I guess the market's kind of flush right now with people doing these things, and they'll be funny, like, hey, we already have an ice cream person. So, well, we're not ice cream, we're snow cones. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
They said, well, we already have a dessert person, or we already have a coffee person. Like, we're not even coffee. Coffee's not dessert. So it's and they'll ask ridiculous sums, and I can't imagine, like, our profit margins are good. If we sell a snow cone for $3, we probably make $2.50 of that snow cone, because there's nothing in the ice and flavor.
The cup, ice, and flavor, yeah.
Right, but people who like sell empanadas or sell like poke bowls or whatever at these places, their profit margins are minuscule, because I know meat costs a ton.
Yeah,
I can't imagine they're making a ton when they pay like the $1,000 entry fee to go to a place, and then maybe they make $200 in profit over a couple days, and it almost doesn't feel worth it at times.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of, as a business person, or yeah, you got to decide like, hey, I'm gonna put in X amount. How much am I gonna get out of it? It's not really working. If you were like, selling your ebooks and it was just like infinite, it doesn't cost any your time. Like, well, yeah, like you do that all day, right? But if you're gonna have to be in person and putting in the work, then it's like, okay, that's not gonna be worth it. Now going back to the Paladin book, so we've actually talked more about your IT book instead of the book that we were actually talking about, because you fascinated me. So my bad.
No, that's good.
So you said it goes back 15 years. What was the like the original kind of idea that you had, where it was like, this is the thing, this was the seed, and it kind of sprouted into, because it's one book, or it's a series?
This one book is coming out in October, but it's going to be a 12-book series. Book 2's actually being written right now and should be out within a year. So my goal is every year release a book and
That's
get
right.
faster if I can. So the original catalyst for this was 15 years ago. I read The Gunslinger by Stephen King, the first in the Dark Tower series. Love the book. It's a phenomenal book. And I read through the entire series as he released it. And the first 3 or 4 books were great. This is a great story. These are great characters. And then I don't know if Stephen King got off message, or his ghostwriters went insane, or something happened. The last 3 books were just not that good. And I caught myself thinking, these books don't directly glorify God. Mm-hmm. Can I take this gunslinger story and make it glorify God? Can I make a version of this where we have these supernatural things, we have vile creatures, we have, the gunslinger and the Dark Towers have conflicted individuals, like Susanna deals with racism, the second guy, I can't remember his name, but he deals with drug addiction. So these very conflicted individuals. I wanted to have more, true good individuals, people who just grew up and are good people. They haven't really had the drug issues, haven't had the pornography issues, haven't had the major issues that we deal with. People say, why do you like Superman? Well, Superman is this true good. He does no evil. So I want to have that kind of characters in these novels. So I wrote a short story. It became the first chapter of this book, and by the time I finished that first short story, my first daughter was born. So life slowed down and focused on kids a little bit. But then as over the years I wrote the next 4 chapters, COVID hits, and the world says you're going to stay home for a couple months. I'm like, I'm going to stay home. But so I focused that time on finishing the book. I said, okay, you're going to make me stay home. I'm going to make this productive, useful time.
Right. So
fortunately, I'm in Florida. Our lockdown didn't last that long. I was able to get to the book and get it finished and get it out in the next couple of weeks. So that was where it came from. Like I said, I want these great stories, but I also want to glorify God in these stories and create characters that can be role models for guys like you and I.
So the inspiration was the dark, because I had never heard of the Dark Tower or that series until maybe like a week or 2 ago, because I think I'd seen Walter actually talk about it, because I don't really read a lot of fiction. Like I said, I'm a serial book buyer, but they're usually like, if somebody comes to our church, I'll buy like their book kind of thing, or one of the homies wrote a book or did something. That's kind of what I'll buy. So like I don't go into Barnes and Noble and like pick out a book, because it's like I don't have a frame of reference, and I'm knee deep like you in like I have really young kids, so I have like you can't see it, but there's stacks of books over here where they're not being read. But you write the book. So the inspiration though is the dark, that was the thing that did it for you too, or it was just like kind of a combination of, hey, all these cool stories in the Bible.
It was a combination.
Here's the story here.
The first chapter itself really was, and if you read the first chapter by itself, it feels like it takes place like in the Wild West. I described the desert, and it takes place in this old abandoned town. Then the book kicks off, you realize it's modern times. So it might be a little bit of a twist for readers. Man, this is not the West. This is modern times. This is a wild location that Brian picked out here. So when I had the first several chapters done, I was like, that's when the inspiration came. Let's aim this more towards God and less towards an homage towards Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy the work, but I said, man, I'm going to get farther and farther away from the Wild West and the Weird West that the Gunslinger kind of leans towards, and get more on what's urban Christian fantasy, I think is the right word I would use for this, where modern times, these are modern events. In my mind, the book takes place in the year 2013. So I was able to use that technology in the book, and being an expert in the field, I was like, oh, this would exist in, this wouldn't exist in. So that, as I wrote it, and I have a character, Roland, in it, he only speaks in Bible verses. He's taken the, let the word of God flow from you. He's taken that literally. So he had to memorize the Bible, Book of Eli style, memorize the thing, and pick a passage out of his head to relay a message to his peers and the readers and whatnot.
Wow. So that was actually what I was thinking of when you said it was kind of like the Wild West, but in modern times. I was thinking of the Book of Eli. So that sounds like, and it was an inspiration for you too, because I always thought the same thing. Like, here's this cool story, and like the Bible was kind of like adjacent. It wasn't like a big part of it. It was just kind of cool. Like, here's this kind of like action figure hero. He's, there's a twist at the end, but so that was actually like, to me, like an underrated story. That's what I'm talking about. It's like, here is something where you kind of like get a message across, but it's just like anybody can watch it, and it's a good movie. But it's like, it leaves that little seed in there for somebody of like, oh, like, what about this Bible that they're so desperate for? Because part of it too was like, if you take something away, it makes it valuable, right? Like we have Bible apps, like you can go to a Goodwill and get Bibles for $0.25 or whatever. We have them in abundance, but in China, like, I don't know if you've ever seen, like, there's like videos of like people smuggling Bibles into China, and like they're filming their reactions of like them getting the Bible, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like they're just like overjoyed by it. And so I kind of had that in mind when I was watching Book of Eli. It's like, oh yeah, like when you take this away, like there's this mysterious power in the Bible. It's like, yeah, that's true, but we're so like, we have so much access to it that we've made it something that's mundane when it's really not.
Yeah, it's in modern America. It's easy to be a Christian. I know people say, "Oh, people are mad at Christians." It's still very easy right now. We're not being challenged. No one's locking us up, taking our Bible. No one's throwing us off rooftops because of our belief. And that happens in the world right now. There's parts of the world where people are persecuted and murdered for their faith in Christ. And I think a lot of American Christians, we haven't been challenged in our faith, and I don't even know how 100% how I would respond in that scenario. I would like to think I would respond, and I would lay down my life for my Savior, but I can't categorically say that because I haven't been asked to do that yet. So it's a challenge we all need to think about. And like Eli in the Book of Eli, he memorizes the entire Bible.
Yeah.
And could I do that? Like, could I have that sort of fortitude and that sort of energy and that sort of faith? It's a challenge. It's something that weighs in my heart at times.
Going back to the Paladin books and that character who memorized the Bible, was that a challenge? Because basically you have to have a frame of reference for what scripture is gonna come out here. That's a lot. Like I've read the Bible like front to back, but like I'm not like Bible off of the quote verse in scripture for anybody. Was that a challenge? That sounds like a lot, man.
It was. So whenever when I knew what he needed to say as far as contextually, I said, okay, I got to find a Bible verse that conveys this. So it forced me to go search for it, and that helped my growth. I'm on like my Bible app, say search for I'm in a lot of pain. Okay, let me find this verse that says I'm in a lot of pain. I got to find that verse that conveys his message, and it helps. There's other characters there who can respond to what he says. It's kind of like in Star Wars when Chewbacca growls and people respond to him. You get what he says out of it. This is a little more direct because he's saying English words,
right,
and people react. Oh, he meant this when he said this verse here.
Yeah, that's a dope concept, man. Like the only character who I can think of in modern who was kind of like that was the the sniper in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
That's the only character I can think of that kind of had that kind of like, hey, biblical, like all the way through. Because he would was it that he prayed when he would shoot, or he would, or he had a verse.
Yeah,
it's been a few years since I've seen.
He did some prayers. He did some verses. Barry Peppers was the actor.
Barry Peppers, yeah.
That was one of my favorite roles I've seen done in a movie. I love that
Mm-hmm.
character. You know, it's just that he was so faithful, but he knew at the same time he had to commit violence against evil. You know, shooting Nazis. That's awesome. Let's go. Everybody go shoot Nazis. That's fantastic. So there's no modern Nazis are there, but let's do demons now. So that's a concept I love.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, because I always just thought it was like really, really cool, because not because it's like, you know, on my team, but it's like, oh, this is not something that you kind of see normally. And I think that's why I like the Book of Eli. Like I didn't even know what it was about when I watched it. It was just like, oh, it's Denzel. Like, all right, let me check out Denzel. And I was like, oh, dang, like this is a really cool story. This is a really cool character, and then like there's a twist, and there's, you know, the conflict, because there was also a time when it was like something was happening to somebody, and he had to make the decision like, I can't get involved because it's just gonna. So, you know, all those kind of normal things, but then on top of it, it was like the Bible was like the prize on there, and it's like, well, why is it so valuable? So, I can't think of another movie that was like that. Did you see the Chosen? The TV series?
Yeah, I think you and I interacted on Twitter about that, how people complained that Jesus wasn't biblical Jesus. Like, dude, it's a TV show about Jesus. Yeah. That's awesome. I don't care that he's not 100% biblically the way you visualize him.
Yeah.
It's a show about Jesus.
Yeah. It's like you can't win, right? And then you would think too, it's like it's the, you know, the secular crowd, but it's like, no, it's like people who are supposed to be like on the team. Like they're the most critical.
Right.
I think, I don't know if you listen to rap, but Kanye did a rap album, God is King, and one of the things that he says on there is like, well, like what are the Christians gonna say? It's like they're the ones that are gonna come at you the hardest, and it's just like, dude, like who else is talking about this stuff? Like who else has done a show like The Chosen? And it's just like, well, why don't the criticism will be like, well, they're not good, and then when they make them, then you don't support them, so then they don't make them, and then when they make a good one, then you complain that it's like it's not like doesn't fit your exact doctrine. Like it's like, come on, man, like over here they're making all kinds of crazy stuff. They don't care as long as they're getting out whatever they want to get out, and so it's like just let these people produce. They're creative. Let them create, and it's not going to be like 100, a straight like Bible story. Like, you know, let it be entertainment. Let people be entertained.
You got to realize, if this show leads even one person to Christ, it's worth it. It's worth it right there. You know, all the millions they spent on it to get that one person into heaven. Outstanding. Good job, fellas.
I'm moved by the show. Like I've watched it. I think I've watched it twice already because like I got it. I'm moved. I'm moved by it. Like it really does move me, and I also like that they kind of like filled in like some of like the characters and the circumstances. Like, did you see it for the both seasons or just the first? So the first season is like Nicodemus, and it's like Nicodemus got the invitation, and then it's like you see them leaving, and Nicodemus is like he's like weeping because it was like he didn't go. It's like, well, it's because he was like this important person, and like you see the dynamic between him and his wife. It's like, you know what, that could have been what happened, like because they mentioned him for a reason, right? And it's like, oh, like I didn't think about. So to me that was very creative, very fun, but it was like the story, and it was just like, oh man, how painful, but also like how much grace that God gave him too. So it was like all those kind of things that I really enjoy about that show. That's like, it's like well done. It's like, okay, maybe it's not 100% in line with, you know, the most expert theologian, but it's like, man, like I am moved when I watch that. Like I like watching with the kids because I'm kind of big on stories too, because I'm realizing that the importance of stories, and that's kind of like why I'm working on that too, where it's like, no, do you talk about Ben Shapiro and facts and feelings, kind of thing? But it's like, no, stories, man. Stories win, not facts.
That's what you remember. You remember the stories.
Yeah. And
The Chosen is wonderful because it has these flawed, relatable characters. Like, I love Matthew. Like, he's borderline got Asperger's.
Yeah.
But he's probably the smartest dude of the group, and I can relate. Like, man, that is a shy guy who's coming out of his shell, and Jesus is like dragging him out. Like, dude, you're gonna be one of my top writers. Come here, come here, dude. I'm like, oh, I love that guy. This is great.
And he's hated, right? He was a tax collector on top of it. So like, you have those multiple layers, but then it's like, oh yeah, like here they got this guy who has like Asperger's stuff. It's like, oh yes, but that makes sense, right? If he's the guy recording this, like he did not deviate even when it was to his, even when it wasn't going to work out for him. He would still talk to the Romans like, hey, like this is what's going on. This is what I see. He pulled no punches because of like that Asperger's-ness that he had. So I thought that was really cool. Before we wrap up here, we do have your, what do you call it, your trailer
for
hype
this
video. The hype video, brother. Yeah, let's see about this. How do I do this?
And this is made by our buddy Walter Wiggins. So this is his work.
Shout out to Walter. Let's see how do I do this. Boom, the Book of Oliver.
Yeah, if people want to know more about it, thepaladinbooks.com. It's the best place to go, or just follow me on Twitter. Great place to get, and the book is going to be out October 29th, and pre-sale should go on this week.
Oh, it's this week, huh?
Yeah.
All right, so this will come out on, what's today? Today's the 10th. So this will come out on the 16th.
Okay.
So when this episode, it'll be out already. So where are they going to go for that? Is that on the?
Yeah, thepaladinbooks.com is the best place, easiest to get to. The link to click to pre-order. The pre-order is only digital through Amazon. Amazon does not do physical pre-orders, so if you want to wait for a physical copy, just wait till it goes live on the 29th. We are having a launch party. We're going to have friends and family and supporters come out, and we're going to have a big event on the 29th when we go live. So we got a comic book coming out. We got that video coming out. We got an audiobook. Yeah, this is a multimedia event. So
I love it.
Big deal.
I love it. Because I got my boys the Action Bible. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I've got 2 copies of it. I love that book.
Yeah, because for that reason, it's like the stories are like in action form, and like you have Samson jacked, and you have like him like ripping over, it's like like this is tell the stories, let them tell them awesome, right? Like the Paladin, like, hey, I in the other podcast, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the podcast, but you had mentioned that like the demons, and also doing like, did you mention like exorcism and stuff, or like, because
exorcisms occur in the book.
Yeah, dude. My man is over here going biblical on him.
I wanted to paint demons on more than one form. They can be possessed people. They can animate dead bodies. They can appear as actual themselves. They can be just voices in your head. There's a lot of ways that demons. I honestly believe in them. As a biblical believer, you should believe in demons as well. That they're trying to get you out of heaven. That's their mission. It's a guerrilla warfare. You're either going to heaven or you're not going to heaven. And their mission is to spit in the face of God and make you not go there. So they're going to try every tactic possible. So the Paladins face many variations of these demons. Like the video you just saw, you saw like a winged demon, you saw like a demon with a sword. There's a variety of things you run across, especially in my book, of these, we got clown demons. And my daughter specifically asked for that because she's got a fear of clowns. Like, I'll write a clown demon for you.
No.
I love it.
Yeah. They are terrifying. So yeah, I don't think they're around as much like at birthday parties like they used to. But I remember seeing my first clown and flipping out like, dude, what the heck is this guy? So No way, man. Hey, I'm excited. I'm really excited for this. So I'm gonna read this because I've actually been looking for like a story book, right? Like everything I read is like how to this, this, but like a story. Like I've been thinking about this. I just kind of want a story to read, just so I can kind of build up that story muscle. So I am really excited for you, Brian. I'm really excited for the book. Like I think I'm gonna have to check. I'm gonna have to get that signed copy of the Help Desk book, because you make IT sound like an adventure now. And it's like, oh, okay. Like here's somebody who's like talking about something I would never have thought about, and in a fascinating way. You have a gift, man, and I appreciate you stepping up and sharing it, man. I can't wait to read these books.
No, and I'll send you a hard copy of the Paladin book too. I'll sign that and get that to you too. They're going to send me, Amazon's going to send me hundreds of copies to sell and give out, so I'll have plenty for you.
All right, he is Brian McCoppin, keeping it poppin', the homeschooling Florida man, father of 3, lover of a wife in Jesus, author of the HellDesk books and the Paladin books. Brian, thanks so much for coming on, man. This was a lot of fun, brother.
No, Joel, thank you. This has been great.
Take care.
You too.